Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Jaya Guru Raya. We will now have a technical talk by Professor V. Ramanathan. We have introduced him in yesterday's session itself, but I would just like to mention one small, just 2 lines about him. He has played a very, very instrumental role in bringing this national conference on new perspectives on science and technology in ancient India to life. And he has been so friendly, so approachable, and has truly been a guiding light for all of us. Thank you so much, Professor. We now request you to please come on stage and deliver your technical talk. Jai Bhagavan Yogi Ramsuratkumar.
I once again stand before you, placing my humble obeisances to Yogi Ramsuratkumar ji and Ma Devaki also, and thank from the bottom of my heart to the Ma Devaki Veda Patasala Trust to have taken it upon themselves this onus of bringing in experts and giving them a platform through this conference. So thank you very much. And what you have been hearing from morning is about the health system, be it Ayurveda or Siddha, from 4 different speakers. This day's session was planned as though it will be from medicinal system as well as chemistry. Now, the manifestation of chemistry in the ancient India, when I say chemistry, is all-encompassing chemistry, not just chemistry per se, as we understand it today. This is the basic building block for these medicinal systems as well. Because in the reductionist point of view, whether be it a herbal drug or a herbo-metallic drug, one has to rely upon this rasayana that makes them, that equips them, and that makes them cure the disease of their patients. So in a way, this is, if the previous 4 talks were of the practical end, this will be the theoretical background to those medicinal system for which our Bharatiya Rasayana Shastra was well developed and had attained its pinnacle stage. A very brief introductory remark followed by some of the metallurgical highlights. Because you have been listening about medicine, I will not harp anything on the medicine aspect. But besides medicine, I will also talk about the non-medicinal aspect of the chemistry and the metals that were there in the country. Highlights from a few prominent chemistry texts, if time permits, and then with concluding remarks. It so happens that we are so enslaved by the colonial mentality that if some brown person like me or anybody for that matter says time and again, even in an English language, will never impress us. But if some foreigner comes and wax eloquent even in a German accented English or a French accented English, we will lap it up. And even if we not understand, we will cheer it with a lot of claps because we have to appear to have understood it. And it's not just an immediate response, but it also gets manifested in various other scholastic domains as well. So with that as a beginning and a reality with which, whether we like it or not, that's a reality, I begin by quoting William Ramsay, who is a Nobel laureate. And he has to say this: the country which is in advance of the rest of the world in chemistry will also be foremost in wealth and general prosperity. So just keep this in mind. And this is not an off-the-cuff statement made by William. Now, if you look at the correlation between the Nobel laureates and GDP of the country to which these Nobel laureates belonged, and especially I'm looking at chemistry Nobel laureates here, there seems to be a strong positive correlation. Mind you, I'm not saying causation. I'm saying still it's a correlation between the GDP and the number of chemistry Nobel Prize that a country has produced. So this kind of vouchsafes supports what William said in the previous slide which I quoted, that advanced knowledge in chemistry, material science directly has got some relation to the economic prosperity as well. Now I'll change gears slightly and draw your attention to this particular trend. A very phenomenal work done by an English economist, Angus Maddison, who was entrusted to look at the world GDP for the last 2000 years, from the beginning of the Common Era till the year 2000. And this paper was published in 2003. And it's a very interesting paper for reasons more than one, from various point of view, like historical point of view, method of research, and of course the data that it has to show. What it shows is the two curves which are colored red and orange. I mean, this is not my way of coloring them. I got it from the net, so there is no sleight of hand here in putting specific colors to specific countries. We see that for the whole of the first millennia and the most half of the second, India and China seems to lead the contribution to world GDP. And after that, what happens? There's a steady decline, although there's a small hump, and I would not get into the nitty-gritties of why that hump comes. But we can see there is a monotonous decrease roughly after the middle of the second millennia. Now, if we look at the previous quotation of what William had to say and correlation between GDP and Nobel Prize in chemistry, we can ask a reverse question, a reverse engineering question perhaps here, that what is it that was in India that attracted the people, because of which you had this decline in the economy? We had decline in the economy because we were attacked, either through invasions or through trade establishments, and that's because of which we see a drain in one direction, and then we see this decline. Now, what is it that made the attackers or invaders attract towards the country? Definitely not the tourism, because the concept of tourism is a recent phenomenon. And if we say seek of knowledge and wisdom, yes, there were, but hardly a few numbers, which you can count it in fingers. So it must have been the material prosperity of the country which attracted our neighbors for good or bad reasons. So what contributed to this material prosperity? Yesterday we saw all those progresses that our ancestors had made in maths and astronomy, which showed intellectual acumen. Yeah, that's on one side. Yes, we treated our society in good health for a long period of time. That's how. Now, what do we do with these able men with sharp acumen? They produced wealth. Because wealth generation is not a sin. It's accumulation of accumulating it in a very illegal way is a sin. But generating wealth has always been one of our cornerstones in the civilizational aspect. So yes, we generated wealth through material means. Of course, that also gave rise to Lokayata or Charavaka, but those are again not in the mainstream. I'll not get into that. But the take-home message that I wish to drive in the introductory remark is that, yes, besides having sharp intellectual acumen, besides treating our populace in good health, besides all these things, we were good at processing materials, extracting metals, processing them, and perhaps exporting them in tons of quantity, which resulted in the real wealth generation. Of course, in land of Tamil Nadu, everybody is aware of this famous Silappadigaram. Allusion was also made by Professor Iyengar yesterday when he was referring to this Vara, concept of Vara when it was introduced. To me, this also is a good chance to see the difference in the materials that are being used, only from that point of view. But from people from literature would argue saying one is from the seashore, which is obviously rich in pearl, whereas other is not from the seashore, so pearl is absent there. But the knowledge that one is Muttu and other is Manikyam, that itself gives us a lot of understanding of the knowledge of different kind of materials and what are their properties, how they are used in different contexts. Be that as it may, the modern chemistry of which I am a student and I teach is very different from the chemistry that I talk from the ancient Indian perspective. Then let's make that very clear in the very beginning. Because this modern chemistry that we study and teach in the school or college is a modern branch of chemistry that has had its birth in the last 200 to 250 or maximum 300 years. Systematized in the second half of the 18th century by stalwarts from Europe like Antoine Lavoisier, Joseph Black, Cavendish, so on and so forth. That's the chemistry that we are all currently familiar with, that we study in the scholastic domain. Whereas in my talk also, and in general, when we refer to Indian chemistry, it is not just this branch of specialized field of chemistry, it is all encompassing other fields involving materials, for instance, from pottery, brewery, dye, metalsmithy, glass making, so on and so forth. So with this, if we see the contribution that the Indian chemistry is said to have made is also varied. Sorry about that. In different domains, and some of which are illustrated, which is in front of you. We do have references of metals right from a very early age. If you look at the Krishna Ayurveda, the famous Hiranyam Chame, Ayaschame, Sisam Chame, Trapushchame, Shamam Chame, Loham Chame, we get to see at one instance an explicit mention of 6 different metals. Now this would only be possible because of 2 reasons. One, now before I go on to the reason, we are all familiar through our history in the school that the human civilization has gone through various stages and ages. Paleolithic age, Mesolithic age, Neolithic age, all the 3 comprising of Stone Age. Then you have from Stone Age to Metal Age, starting from Copper Age, then Bronze Age, then Iron Age. Right? Now whether we are in Silicon Age or Garbage, that's up to us to look at the perspective. This is the standard timeline of evolution of different civilizations. With respect to India, whether it is applicable or not is a question that we need to ask. Why? Because one evidence is this, where we have explicit mention of iron and copper at the same time. This is only possible if this composition is composed after the Iron Age. That is when copper would have already been discovered, then iron, then this verse could have been composed. Or this linear time frame of stone, copper, bronze, iron is indeed not applicable to the Indian context. These are the only 2 possibilities after looking at this Chamakam verse from Krishna Ayurveda, is what we can conclude at. But my point here is that there is an explicit mention of metals in the Vedic context. Now from chemistry background, you need to know that not all of them are present in their native state in nature. We have to invest energy by giving them electrons. Then these metals are present in the salt forms, except for gold. Gold can be present in its native state. We have to invest energy by giving them electrons, reduce them to their zero oxidation state, and that's how a metal can be used as a metal. Otherwise, if they are in the salt form, which we cannot make use of them in the form of metal. So there is, mentioning a metal and not confusing with its salt. Mind you, this is not a very trivial thing. When we see them in the Chamakam as one passage, it may appear statistically very insignificant. But for me, as a student of chemistry, it's quite vital that much of process has gone, especially in the case of, say, Aya. Aya, of course, linguists are in logahorns, whether it is generic metal or is it iron. But for me, it is a metal. Let us take it as a metal. Sisa is, in fact, lead. Lead can never be present in a zero oxidation state in the nature. Some energy has to be invested to get it to its zero oxidation state. So the very fact our Vedic rishis, mantra drushtas, have not described the process. Fortunately or unfortunately, they did not have this burden of writing the paper in the introduction, methodology, result and discussion and conclusion format. They were not restricted to that, fortunately or unfortunately, due to which we cannot know how they arrived at this particular statement. But what we have is this statement. There are again linguistic nuances which I would not like to get into due to want of time. When it comes to gold, of course, gold has been the darling metal of different civilizations across the globe. Egyptians, Mesopotamians, Babylonians, as well as Indians. And provenance of gold on the Earth's crust is very, very, very minimal. It's even less than 0.01% in the Earth's crust. Now, despite that, the attraction of our ancestors, not just from this country, but from various other geographies to gold, is indeed very fascinating. And as I said before, gold is perhaps one of the few metals that is found in its zero oxidation state. So all that you need to do is mechanically separate, not chemically process, mechanically separate, and then kind of process it to the shape and the form that you wish to utilize it for. So there are various instances of gold being explicitly mentioned in our Vedic corpus, and this is just a very small survey where all you can find it. I'll not bother you to read line by line and explain where all it comes. This is from the specifically the Rig Vedic corpus, that a few I have shown you here, where all there is gold and its paryaya. Paryaya means the meaning, the alternate words for gold that we get to see in the literature, in Rig Veda. Similarly, not just Rig Veda, but when you go on to the Samhita period also, this is from the Shatapatha Brahmana. So just to impress upon you that there is a copious mention of this metal in our literature. And of course, ornaments. Perhaps ours is the only country that even till date, the obsession to gold in the form of ornament is still existing. And this is one of the civilizational memories that we carry forward. I mean, there are also a lot of back of the envelope calculations being made that if we extract out all the gold that are lying dormant in a woman's treasury at home, it will match the country's GDP. So that is, in fact, it is good, but then government after government, whether it is Congress or BJP, whoever it is in the center, mind you, everybody's eye is in that gold. Temple gold as well as the house treasury gold. So we'll have to be very careful on that. Nobody is on our side except for our own civilization, for that matter. So we have descriptions of various ornaments. And I mean, there are texts which go into detail of describing the forms of this ornament, and I'll not get into detail. And in Tamil literature, I was thinking that we are giving it in Chennai, so there must be also some allusions to Tamil literature as well. So this Ainguru Nuru, Vazhiyadan, Vazhi Avini. By the way, Adan is kind of cognate with Adam. So this also gives a lot of leeway to missionaries to interpret it in a different way. So Vazhiyadan, Vazhi Avini, Nelpala Poliga, Pon, Peridu, Sirakka. So Pon, of course, Ponniyin Selvan is what we call this very famously immortalized to the movie as well. So the word Pon, we have a lot of provenance for it to occur, but not just Pon, and there's also another example from Purananuru, Igai. Igai is also another synonym for gold. It was a news to me when I was making it. Then Seidai, again Pon, you have another example. And interestingly, the other words for gold in Tamil itself are like Atakam. Sembon, of course, we have seen it. Kilichirai, Navalam, and there is one more word, Sambunadam. Okay, I want you to just keep this in mind, these particular words, Atakam, Kilichirai, Navalam, and Sambunadam. Because here, now I put it in Devanagari, so perspectives will slightly change. From Dravidian, I become Aryan now. So, Jambunadam, Shatakumbham, Hatakam, Vainavam, Shringashuktijam, Jatarupam, Rasavidham, Akarodgatam cha Suvarnam. So they are all the different varieties of gold is being described here. Now if you have not yet slept, a question to you, can you guess which text I am talking about? There you are, but cheating that is. Because we were discussing about it yesterday. This is from Arthashastra. The reason to ask is the general perception among the people about the document Arthashastra is that it is a literature on polity, or it is a literature for economics. But mind you, it has got a whole adhikarana. Adhikarana is like a mega chapter on metallurgy and material science. That is the second adhikarana. And it starts with gold, silver, copper, all the 6 metals. And then it goes on about gems, it goes on about different minerals, salts, and dwells much deeper. Why am I harping about this is, all said and done, this is one of the earliest written text evidence that has come down to us in an unbroken way. Because again, caught in the Western trap, we need to go for written evidences. The Sor Parampara or the Maukhik Parampara is not given that much provenance to. It is classified as intangible world heritage. That's all you do. It's like putting something on a pedestal and worshipping it, but then not making use of it. Making use of it really comes when it is form of a tangible evidence that become intangible. Keep that in mind, okay? I mean, Vedas have become intangible heritage, for that matter. So this, now you see the similarity between the Tamil synonyms for gold, Atakam, Kilichirai, again, Kilichirai doesn't come here. Shringa Shuktijaya only it comes, but it comes slightly later. The Kilichirai was indeed a very interesting revelation to me as well. But other names like you see Navalam, Jambunadam is exactly what you find even in the Sanskrit literature. Now, we can create controversy by saying whether Kautilya copied Tamil literature or Tamil literature copied Kautilya. That is like a chicken and an egg problem. It is not going to solve the purpose. The point that we need to recognize or kind of reconcile is we have the provenance of these equally in Sanskrit and Tamil. That's a message that I wish to convey here. But that again, okay, here what is being told, the second sentence here is, Kimjalka varnam mridusnigdham anadi bhrajishtu cha sreshtham rakta pitakam madhyamam raktam avaram. This is the style of writing the text also in the ancient this Shastra period, that you give very cryptic lines about their properties as well. So here the properties are being discussed. And the next one, if you see here, Tataha Shulka Kakunyat Uttarapasarita Chatusiman Taditi Shodasha Varnakaha. It's talking about alloying gold with copper. Shulba Kakuni. Kakunya is a measure. Shulba is a copper here. Interestingly, by the way, Shulva is for copper. All of you must have heard the word sulfur, right? Sulfur, actually, word comes from Shulvari of Sanskrit. Shulvasya arihi iti Shulvari. Why Shulvasya ari? Why is it called enemy of copper? Because sulfur readily reacts with copper among the different other metals. Since sulfur readily reacts with copper, it is deemed as copper's enemy. So this becomes Shulvari in Sanskrit. And that get etymologically transported to English as sulfur, which we today also use it in the textbook. But as a student of chemistry, I never came to know, even till my PhD, that the etymology of sulfur is Shulvari, thanks to our education policy. Here, what I wish to say is, the gold is being alloyed, and there are 16 varieties of gold is being talked about. Today in the market, we know there are 24 karat, 22 karat, 20, 18, and in India, nobody goes below 16. But in Europe, Raghav, you can verify it with Raghav, they will start only with 18. If they go to 20 also, it will be like very difficult for them. And their 18 karat will be more expensive than our 24 karat today. Because the labor charge there will be very different over there. But here, Kautilya's time, we talk about 16 varieties of gold, and they are made by alloying it with copper. But mind you, I am not at all to give an impression that Kautilya's time people knew phase diagram. For those of you from metallurgy background or physics background, phase diagram is what I'm showing you here, where on the x-axis you have the material composition, and on the y-axis you have temperature. That is, if you want to mix 85% of copper, gold and 15% of copper, what is the temperature you need to heat it up so that they become an immiscible liquid, alloy. Otherwise, they may become immiscible at a higher temperature. When you cool down, they will separate out. You do not want that. Like this, today we understand it from this concept called phase diagram. I am not at all hinting that our ancestors knew phase diagram, not at all. They had done it in what way they did it, they have not revealed it to us. It could have been empirical, it could have been serendipitous, it could have been even methodical. We don't know. But all that we know from what they have told is they have made 16 varieties of gold. Okay? And not just that. Suppose somebody has made, say, 16 karat gold and selling it at the rate of 22 karat gold. He should be punished. Now, for that, one needs to identify that this is a 16 karat gold. And that is a technology which even today we are using in a continuous way for 2000 years. And what is that technology? It is that Uraikal. This Uraikal technology has been documented in Arthashastra. That is what is the bottom shloka is what is revealing about it. And when a certain particular thing documents it, it doesn't mean it was invented during that time. A Priestley discovered oxygen in 16th century. That doesn't mean oxygen came into existence only in 16th century. So similarly, we do not know when was Uraikal in practice or from when it was in practice. We do not know that. But the first written evidence, we get it from the period of Arthashastra. This is again a description of a solid state reaction. Akarot gatam sisanvayena bhidyamanam pakapatrani kritva gandikasu kuttayet kadali vajra kanda kalke va nishechayet. So this is a description of a solid state reaction which is non-trivial even to this day in any sophisticated chemistry lab. Because just a basic chemistry, when we eat, madhye madhye paniyam samarpayami is what we also do. We also take. So that there is the fluidity is maintained, and in the stomach when it churns, it is easily digestible if it is in a fluid form. So chemistry happens when things are in a fluid form. So solid state reactions are extremely difficult, even from modern chemistry perspective as well. So here is one such example where we get to purify gold from its ore by mixing certain salts and beating it. And that is what is being talked about here. Whose English description is here, I'll not get into the detail. So much to tell you that I have covered gold only till the Arthashastra period. That is from the Vedic period till Arthashastra is again not dated. Perhaps ours is the only country which can go to Guinness Book of World Record to have maximum number of scientific texts and scientists who are undated. So, for instance, Kautilya's Arthashastra itself, we do not know when it was written. And there are people who claim that there is not one Kautilya, there is not one layer of Arthashastra, it has grown over a period of time. That's a very pet peeves of our people who would like to beat us. Be that as it may. But still nobody has at least put it as absurd as 500 AD or 250 AD. No, it is before the Common Era, that much we know. How much before the Common Era, that we have not, we have also been lazy, we have not worked it out yet. We are waiting for some Oxford or Cambridge to do it, and then we will, time and again, I'll come to the stage and repeat it with all pomp and show that, okay, this is the Oxford result. Moving ahead, iron has also been one of our very important civilizational metals. I actually forgot to put a picture here. Gold, of course, was respected, but if you go to Jamshedpur, if you have a chance to visit to that Ranchi, not Jamshedpur, sorry, in Jharkhand, capital of Jharkhand, Ranchi, there is this Steel Authority of India Limited head office over there. They have a very big plank, like how you have this Arjuna, Krishna, that Bhagavad Gita episode thing, as big a plank over there, depicting Alexander and Puru, the interaction between them, and Puru is standing with an attendant who is having a gold case, and inside that there is a brick of iron. You see here, today we put our gold inside the iron safe. There, gold was the safe, and iron was kept inside and was being gifted to Alexander. Okay? The point is, steel was considered, when it was discovered, steel was considered, and especially the Indian steel, was considered even much more superior to gold. Of course, they didn't make ornaments out of steel and wore it. They were not that foolish. Ornament status was given still to gold. But when it comes to erecting building, or when it comes to making utensils, they did not waste gold for that. They were judicious in selecting what is it for what. Now, how did they come to it, that we do not know. But iron was prized to that extent, because by that time, perhaps the requirement in the war, in the military, in the form of weaponry, iron was much more in demand. There are, in agricultural equipments also, if you look at the research, there are very few copper sickles being found, and when iron took over, the copper sickles are completely replaced, because the copper is much more ductile than iron. The robustness of iron can be felt. In the Vedic context, again, among the linguists, you have a lot of splitting the hair and also cutting each other's throat, of arriving at the consensus on the meaning of a particular word. So here, one such word is aya. there are people who argue that Aya became iron, so that in South India, even now, if I say iron, I'll be looked down upon. It has to be pronounced as only iron. In North India, if I say iron, I'll be looked down upon. I have to say only iron. So now, being a student of chemistry, iron, I-O-N and I-R-O-N has to be very differentiated. So student of chemistry, I say it as I-R-O-N, iron, and I-O-N is iron for me. There are linguists who argue, okay, iron has come from iron. Okay, be that as it may, that's a different story. Let's take it as Aya as a metal, not even like an iron metal. What it says is, it talks about the war in Rig Veda, where one of the character in the war, named Vishpala. Linguists are again in loggerheads, whether this Vishpala was a female warrior, or he was a man, or it was a horse. We don't know yet. But whatever the character Vishpala was, she or he or it had lost the leg. Now here, Sadhyo Jangham Ayasi Vishpalayai Dhane Hite Sartave Pratyadhattam. So this Ashwin, there is a reference to Ashwin somewhere. The previous one it comes. I think it doesn't come in this shloka. The previous shloka it comes. That the Ashwins had given a prosthetic leg to this Vishpala. Prosthetic leg, some people interpret it as iron leg, some people interpret it as a metal leg. So what I want to hint upon is that there is an invocation of metal even in this context as well. But what fascinates me is that when you look at the archaeological artifacts across the country, right, from Delhi till Tirunelveli or from Dwaraka till the east, far east, you see that the composition of the finished iron artifacts, archaeologically excavated, are more or less similar. What could it mean? That the pan-Indic knowledge of processing iron was prevalent. Or it could have been made in one central location and it was distributed. The second possibility is of a very theoretical possibility. Practically, it would not have been possible. So there is a diverse prevalence of a pan-Indic knowledge of processing iron, and that too processing it in such a way that it remains rust-free. All of us know about the Delhi iron pillar, which has remained rust-free, but there are several other iron pillars besides Delhi iron pillar. Close to this place in Karnataka, you have Kolur Mukambika temple, where you have this Kodachadri iron pillar. Of course, now people are again starting to report that it is starting to rust. Perhaps they were waiting for centuries when it will rust, when it will rust. Now since it has started rusting, they are taking interest on it now. Otherwise, it was Delhi iron pillar only. Then you have in Madhya Pradesh, you have Dhar. In fact, Dhar iron pillar is, if I'm not wrong, more than 2 times the length of the Delhi iron pillar. Now it is cut in 3 pieces and kept horizontally. Then if you go to Puri in Odisha, you have the iron beams used for the doorway kept outside, lying exposed to the nature, sun and rain, but still not rusted. So we have prevalence of this rust-free iron throughout the country. I spoke about it. Then you also know about the famous, what is this sword called? It's called Damascus sword. Damascus is a place in Syria, but then it comes from Wood's steel. Wood's is again an anglicized word. Basic word is Tamil. Urukku. Urukku becomes Ukku in Kannada and Telugu, and then these people anglicize it to Woods. So that's how it is referred to today as even Wood's steel and as a Damascus sword. The beauty of it was that it could last several killings. That it was quite lightweight and it lasted several beheadings without losing its sharpness. Of course, today you will not behead with this. I mean, today even words are enough to behead somebody, or you use nuclear bombs. But the point is, the technology that will go into making lightweight iron yet retain its physical property is quite an interesting and important property. I'll not get into the ideological aspect because that will unnecessarily digress me. And yeah. Just last comment on the iron technology is that I should now in this context remember Professor R. Balasubramaniam. Thanks to him, I got into this foray of archaeometallurgy and interest in such topics. Unfortunately, he passed away very young. He was a professor at IIT Kanpur when I was a student, And it was he who had introduced these kind of topics when we were students, and it was he who had found out the science behind the Delhi iron pillar, why it did not rust. Now in his work, when we were listening to him, it was made very clear to us that the maximum quantum of the railway budget that goes into is maintaining the railway lines which are rusting very frequently. So it is still a mystery as to why we can't go back to the older technology of making rust-free iron so that a major chunk of our railway budget can get easily solved. Okay? So technology was there, and there are people to resurrect it. Now commerce and economics has to also support for that. In this age of global tendering and where things become a global market, even though we have a proven technology, to get into the market for is also a challenging aspect. Anyway, going ahead, I will wind up soon because I would also like to attract questions if there are. Copper, as those of you who have had some experience of wearing some copper like a kada or a kangan, you will see that it will become green very soon because it oxidizes quite fast. But here you have a very tall Colossus standing Buddha excavated from Sultanganj in Bihar around 1850s or so. I think it was Alexander Cunningham who had started the excavation. But right now it is remaining safe in the Museum of Birmingham. And thanks to that, it has not perhaps rusted, or thanks to the copper technology done by our ancestors, that it has still not rusted. But it is no longer with us, it is with Birmingham. Okay? So not just Kohinoor, not just our skills, we have to get back a lot of things. So in the context of copper, with the two alloys of copper that are very important are brass and bronze. And with one professor in Chennai, a book chapter is coming out, maybe which should be out by early next year, where I had the good fortune of writing it along with Professor Desi Raju of IISc. We have gone much deeper into the provenance of the brass in our country. Just very quickly to tell you, brass, pittalai, what we call it in Tamil, can be made of two types. It's an alloy of copper and zinc. Morning talk, Sudhir told that Nagam is a word referring to zinc. But today, what is a popular reference to zinc? How do we refer to zinc in Tamil? Sorry? Tuttanagam, that's what. That is a word that I was looking for. Zinc is referred to as Tuttanagam. And interestingly, the Chinese word for zinc is also Tutanag. Exactly borrowed from this Tuttanagam of Tamil. Okay? And it is established that it is borrowed from Tamil. So Tamil did not borrow it from Chinese. So linguistically, it has been established. So I can confidently say that. In the Sanskrit etymology, zinc has got various names at different periods. So I'll not get into the finer aspects of the linguistic nuances here. But brass can be made by alloying copper and zinc. Now, there are natural processes. Sudhir showed that zinc always occurs as an ore along with lead. Lead and zinc ore come together. In fact, not just lead and zinc. Many minerals, many metals ore come together. Because of their similarity in the atomic size, many ores will come naturally together. And together is also copper and zinc also. And if you are smelting copper, at that time if you get brass, it's called an accidental brass. But in such brass, you cannot have more than 15% of zinc. But there are several archaeological artifacts where you have more than 30% of zinc. You travel slightly north of Bangalore, in Bidar, you have Bidri works, quite famous. Bidri works contain zinc more than 40%, sometimes even close to 60% of zinc. So such things are only possible if you have pure zinc alloyed with pure copper. It cannot be an accidental brass. And brass has got various synonyms like Riti, Ritika, Pittala, Arakuta, Ara, Swarnaka Krita. If you really look at brass being made, if you go to Swamimalai, of course, bronze is what you will get to see. Brass, there are very little pockets in Tamil Nadu, but if you come to north, there's a whole belt of smelting brass. If you see the smelting process of brass, you will get confused for the time being whether gold is being melted or whether brass is being made here. So it has got that kind of a shine, and our ancestors had beautifully captured it by the term Swarnaka Krita for that. Anyway, I will not bother you with these details. The mention of brass in ancient literature are far and wide. One such example is from the Atharva Veda. Tadaha Vaishwanaram Pittalam Tadashvina Viveshata Viveshatamiti. Again, Pittala comes in Katya and Shauta Sutra. See, there were mention about Shauta Sutra, Shrauta Yaga and all yesterday. That, for me, what interested is, what are the utensils that go inside those Shrauta Yaga? Because you have to make a lot of rice cakes for that. You have to keep it above it. Some rice cakes have to be done in a flat pan, something in a hemispherical. What are the utensils they were used? There was specific mention of earthen pot, earthen utensils. There is specific mention of iron and copper and brass. So those distinctions to have been made, it's also quite non-trivial task. I will not bother you with this again. Bronze, of course, I don't have to talk to a Tamil audience about the bronze technology. Zinc, I'll close with the zinc part. Zinc, I'm glad that Dr. Meera is still here. She was about to leave, but something brought her back. There is a reference to Pushpanjana, even way back in Charaka Samhita. Normally considered as calamine. But does that really mean we are using zinc? That's again a bigger question mark. And similarly in Arthashastra, you have Akarodgata, even used for silver. I have not shown you the shloka for silver. But interestingly, zinc also comes as as a zinc ore, are often found occurring together with silver ores also. That's why one of the names of zinc in Sanskrit is Yashada. Yajayor Abheda, Yashada becomes Jashada. Jashada in vernacular parlance, it becomes Jasta. And that's what today in North India you use Jasta for zinc. Okay? But the point here is, zinc provenance, when it was exactly found in the olden literature, is still unclear. And my search and any amount of discussion with Ayurvedic people have not come to any converging consensus on that. That's an open question still left for academic research. But what we surely know is from at least the 12th century in the Common Era, where texts like Rasaratna Samuchaya clearly talks about distillating zinc. So this is one such process which describes about how you use a Vrintaka Musha, and Vrintaka Musha is like a brinjal-shaped retort. You keep the one at the bottom underground facing up, one filled with calamine and some carbon material for it to carbonize it and invert it, place it on the top. You apply heat from the top, the zinc melts. And one of the properties of zinc is that as soon as it melts, it has a tendency to vaporize. So you cannot process it in an open furnace. You have to have a closed furnace. And this was one of the ingenious, perhaps world's first closed furnace thing that people were able to lay their hands upon and thereby process zinc. Chemistry is quite involved here. I'll not get into those aspects. But what is more important is again a stamp by a foreigner. Like in this case, a Cradock, whom even we had given a Padma Shri, if I'm not wrong. Cradock is again a UK museum curator as well as a metallurgist, archaeometallurgist to be very precise. He had done extensive work on Indian archaeometallurgy, no doubt about that. B.M. Hegde and our B.V. Subbarayappa from Karnataka, they have all worked with him as well. Rather, he has worked with him as well. What he has to say that many tens of thousands of tons of zinc were processed, and this, they claim, is the earliest dated zinc mines in the world. Earliest known zinc production on an industrial scale. Again, there's a question, why was zinc needed that much in 12th century, 13th century, is again an open-ended question. Today we use zinc for galvanizing. Suppose you have an iron bar, and then you galvanize it with zinc so that the rusting process, you call sacrificial protection, because the zinc acts like an anode, and in the corrosion process, zinc corrodes faster than the iron. It's like how some females apply cosmetic on their face. The UV first reacts with the cosmetic and not your skin. So same way it is like the galvanization. But back there in 1200, 1300 CE, what was the use of this much amount of zinc in the world is something that is people have not yet looked at. But the fact is, yes, India was producing zinc and it was exporting. And it's not that the tradition is lost. Those of you who are here can just go to Swamimalai and see how the bronze business is still thriving. This is a place from not very far from here, Aranmula near Trivandrum, where the tin bronze-based mirror are still used. And from Rajasthan, the Thewa art to make very tiny filigree of gold on glass. Same filigree work from Odisha you have on silver. And the place where I'm currently coming from, Banaras, it's known. All the Kanchipuram Pattu Podavai that we all see here, the jari actually comes from Banaras. The basic jari comes from Bombay and Surat, and they make the brocade, and those come back to Kanchipuram for that Korve Pattu that is weaved as a cross to the Tanabana of the fabric. I will not bother you much here. Perhaps my last slide, and I will close with it. Again, if you have battled your sleep till now and you are still awake, what I want you to make out is, what is it that the Granthakara is trying to convey here? And not Raghav, not Sudarshan, others. Not Meera also. All that I want is, what is it that they are trying to convey here? Don't tell me the literal meaning for it. Avartamane kanake pita, tare sita prabha, shulve neela nibha, krishnavarna sureshwari, vangejwala kapotabha, nage maline dhumaka, so on and so forth. Shailetu dhusara devi, so on and so forth. Don't worry about literal meaning. Any guess? Unfortunately, I don't have any school student here, but I'm sure you all would have your kids or grandkids in school. Perfect, bingo, you are there. This is the first ever documented flame test of metals. But unfortunately, unfortunately, of course, our textbooks never inform us about this kind of intellectual heritage. Avartamane, you introduce Kanake, gold, to the flame color changes to Pita, yellow. Avartamane, Kanake, Pita, Tare is silver, Sita is white, the Prabha, that flame becomes white. So on and so forth it goes. There are internal things. They had even arranged the metals in terms of the reactivity. Suvarnam, Rajatam, Tamram, Tikshtam, Vangam, Bhujangamam, Lohantu, Shadvidam, Tacha, Yathapurvam, Tad Akshayam. See, I have deep respect for all the spiritual tradition, no doubt about that. But nobody can sit in meditation and somebody can come and say, you arrange the metals in this order. And that's how this sloka would have come. No, this is not possible based on that. Unless you do some empirical test. Because why I'm saying this is people always, the critics always say, fine, everything is only fictitious in your literature. People have not tested it. We do not have the methodology aspect described to us, unfortunately. They felt that we are brainy enough to crack that out. It's like saying, ungaatla innikku enna samayal naka, na innikku saadam adichenu yaare solvala. Purinjukano. Sambar irukku, taligam irukku naka, kandipa saadam irukku purinjukano. 100 வருஷத்துக்கு அப்புறம் சாதமே இல்லாத போது சாதமே எழுதலையா நீ சாதம் போட்டான்னு எப்படி தெரியும் உங்களுக்குன்னு கேட்டா அது எவ்வளவு ஒரு அசட்டத்தனமா இருக்கும் அது. That is similarly, the methods have not been entailed in our text for various reasons. That doesn't mean they did not do the test. This is only possible after they have done the test and they have documented it. Yep. This is like, since we are all involved, both MDS, Ramana, Rama Jayasundar, Madam, now we are involved in some textbook writing also. So, as from chemistry point of view, I think those of students who could not get maths group, first of all, those who in India, the point is, those who could not get into science, engineering, they will come to science. Those who could not get maths, they will go to physics. Those who did not get maths and physics, they will come to chemistry. So much so that the chemistry is made in such a way that is either getting all the filtered out products, and either those products are writing the books, because of which the books are so dry and boring. I don't blame, you take up a book of chemistry, you feel like, you understand why students hate chemistry. Whereas you take up a book of physics, like Richard Feynman's lectures in physics, The kind of interesting thing he makes in physics is very different. Here, I get inspiration from the ancient Granthakara. All that the Granthakara wanted to convey is sulfur is very reactive. That's all. How did he convey it? Here you see a picture, elephant subduing a lion. Although we know lion is the king of a forest. But when does a lion become a king of a forest? Only by killing an elephant. And when can it kill an elephant? Only if the lion attacks the elephant from the back side. If the lion attacks the elephant from the front side, lion will always lose. Elephant will always win. Right? So see the Granthakara, who is a chemist, who captures this and puts it in the thing to convey sulfur is reactive. Naso asti loha matango yenna gandhaka kesari nihantvad gandhamatrena yadva makshika kesari. There exists no elephantine metal that cannot be subdued by a lion like sulfur. மூக்கை இப்படி தொடறதுக்கு இப்படி தொடரான்னு கூட சொல்லலாம். ஆனால் இதில் வந்து ஒரு creativity இருக்கு இல்லையா? You see, now student is made to learn about the ecology also. What the cross-disciplinary thing the NEP is talking about. Sulfur is reactive, okay, I know, but now through this imagery, if it is being introduced, it can only add to the knowledge to the student. Okay? So, yes, I have told so many things as last slide. This is truly my last slide. I'll not go beyond that. Because a student of Raman spectroscopy, I always like to end my talk with his slide. Raman was given Nobel Prize. He was invited to Cambridge by none other than Rutherford. Raman tours around Rutherford, Cambridge, and comes back to Rutherford and very dishearteningly says, Cambridge is not a place for serious science. Can you imagine? Raman touring around Cambridge and coming back to Rutherford and saying Cambridge is not a place for serious science. Why? Because in his entourage, Raman sees people dancing, people singing, people doing carpentry, people doing metalsmithy, all sorts of things people are doing in Cambridge. And that's how he gets an impression that this place is not for a serious science. And what does Rutherford reply? We do not grow bookworms here. We train men to govern empire. And somehow in yesterday's talk, what MDS has said, this 200 years of slumber has only made us bookworms. So that at least I cannot do a metalsmithy, but I can talk about metalsmithy. So I'm also an example of that bookworm here. We have only ended up making bookworms. So at least now through such interventions, through such conferences, we'll aspire to make people who can govern empire. And I once again thank you all for your patient listening and Ma Devaki Veda Patasala Trust to have given me this wonderful opportunity to share these thoughts with you all. Thank you. I know I have overshot time, but we can break for tea. If you have any questions, any burning question, you can have one. Otherwise, we can take it up during the tea break. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. I mean, I'm given the privilege of at least answering 2 questions. So for formality's sake, you can ask 2 questions at least. Yeah, thank you, Raghava.
So when I was doing my internship in the Raman Institute, his ashes are scattered on the tree there. We used to play football there.
So there's a tree which grows, which he has,
Yes.
when his ashes were interred,
Yes.
they had planted a
planted that tree.
sapling. Now the tree has actually grown there in his thing. Raman is a very interesting phenomenon, I would say. Talking of Pittala, perhaps I should have mentioned it there, but now that you talk about this, he was very upset with Nehru for somehow or the other reason. Once Nehru was supposed to visit RRI, okay? And then because he was upset with Nehru for various reasons, because of starting CSIR, because of starting this planning commission and all. But when he invited Nehru to RRI, there was a demonstration where something was appearing like a gold, glittering like a gold. And Nehru was taken aback. Then in that curiosity, Nehru asks Raman, where is this gold from? Then Raman says, aha, I cracked you. This is not gold, this is actually bronze. And when the UV rays are shining on the bronze, it glitters like gold. So I made a fool of you. He takes that kind of a pride and he also writes about it. So he had such kind of quibs with him I mean, there are a lot of things that we can talk about Raman on a personal basis.
Yeah, can I ask a question, sir? So you discussed about all the metals. In Ayurveda we find, and in Siddha we use mercury, but we don't find that it's explained as a metal anywhere, as a loham, because probably it's not very hard. And we use it in Kalvam and we make it into a powder form like a kajali. So how has the other Shastras explained about mercury?
Mercury, there is again a controversy in Charaka Samhita, if I'm not wrong. Rasaka, there is a mention of Rasaka which comes not in very frequent places, in very few places, where some of the Rasashastri have interpreted that as mercury. Of course, I am not supporting that. But yes, it's true that our early literature do not talk about mercury at all. So much so that even in Arthashastra, people have tried to interpolate and match to some terms like, again, rasa, rasaka as mercury, but there are no strong evidences for that. There is one text which is quite enigmatic, and there's a reason why I'm saying enigmatic is, this is Rasarnava. Can you imagine the dating of this Rasarnava? What is the error bar that this has? You have it all the way from 1500 BCE till 800 CE. 2300 years of, I mean, plus or minus roughly it is 1300 years error bar it has. Now, why I'm saying this is, Rasarnava is the first one text where we come across a lot of description of mercury. Okay? Now, the term rasa somehow is equated to only mercury, which is in fact wrong. And starting from P.C. Ray, they have classified all such texts which have got the term rasa in their title as an iatrochemical and a tantra period text, which they have dated it from 8th century CE onwards. But there is one guy, Bhudev Mukherjee, who writes in the book Rasa Jala Nidhi. He puts the date to Rasarnava as 1500 BCE. Now, if you look at various other texts which have come later, which talks about mercury, they take a lot of allegiance and reference to this Rasarnava. So definitely Rasarnava seems to be early text. Its date we do not know, but that's the first text where we get to see explicitly about mercury. Tamil text, yes, there are a lot of Siddha. Sudhir is not around, but he would be able to supplement it better. There are references to mercury coming, but then the dates are again debatable in the case of Siddha text. I know that people from JNU have worked in it, where they have said that a lot of things have been extra exaggerated in terms of dating, but let's not get into that. But to me, it appears Rasarnava as a first text which describes about mercury. Mercury is not found in our soil. Like many other metals, mercury is not found. So the theory of how it came to India also is a bigger question there.
It is found in Himalayas, right? The wells of Himalayas?
Like
It's
anything
history.
one thing is that anything and everything we attribute it to either Vedas, if it is in the intellectual domain, or Himalayas if it is in the material domain.
No,
But,
there are wells from which they
No,
mine, right?
I get your point, but on a lighter vein, I said that if you read Subbarayappa's works, he is of the opinion that it has come from China. There are other chemists who have shown references to mercury in South America, but how it traveled from South America to India, that link is not still clear. But again, how the mercury came to India is an open question. We really do not know. But yes, of course, after it had come, we had made very well use of it. That is, of course, known to everybody. But yeah, to answer your question in short, it is Rasarnava, and how it came to India, we don't know. Okay, yep.
Is it possible that iron in the copper age could have been from some sort of meteoritic source, not necessarily an ore?
See, regarding gold, there is a lot of such theories that it is not naturally found because Earth is not conducive for producing, Earth's crust is not conducive for producing gold vis-a-vis other metals, and that's what the statistical distribution also says. So regarding gold, yes, I have read a lot of papers where it is said that it is either a meteoritic showers which had got impregnated in rock. But regarding copper, I am not very sure. I have not come across such meteoritic provenance of copper. Regarding gold, yes, I agree.
Because in Egypt, there is apparently a metal sword during their Bronze Age, which was forged from meteoritic ore or something.
Whether it was a meteoritic thing or whether it was really an ore, we do not know. But yes, Egyptians, as I told in my talk also, Egyptians, Babylonians, Sumerians were also equally adept in processing gold. They were also having that kind of knowledge. Yep. Very well. I was afraid that this question would not come up. Alchemy, again a very like algorithm, al-Khwarizmi, it's algorithm, alchemy becomes alchemy. My readings in that are not mature yet. Let me put it that upfront. But in my process of reading, what I have come across is that, and it will be back supported by Meera as well as Sudhir, I'm sure, you have two concepts of siddhi in our tradition. One is called Lauha Siddhi and the other one is called Deha Siddhi. Okay? And Sudhir in his presentation had talked about when was mercury first used in the body. Correct me if I'm wrong, but in the Ayurvedic literature, I think it was in the Ashtanga Hridaya that for the very first time we see the, this is in the context of mineral acid, so I don't have to take that reference. Coming to the Deha Siddhi and Lauha Siddhi, there seems to be a methodological approach. Because in Dhatu Shastra text, suppose an alloy is made. Why do we make an alloy? To strengthen its mechanical property and make it more robust to rusting. And how they describe it, the Dhatu is attaining Amaratva. So that Amaratva, the immortalization of the Dhatu is what is being invoked for that particular metal when it is getting alloyed. So through such Loha Siddhi, they attempted to have this Deha Siddhi. It is like first experimenting in guinea pig and then testing it in human. That's what animal testing is what is done today. Our ancestors, Vaidyas, they did it first in the metals and they checked it out. How it reacts in the metal. If they're convinced, then they converted it into the medicine for the human form. Okay. Now, this concept of alchemy was differently pursued in Persia and in Europe, where they were behind converting everything into an immortal, we are today attributed as gold. But this concept of immortalization is what I'm trying to draw an attention to this long way, winding background there. So perhaps with that baggage, when they looked into these literature also, they have wrongly attributed this practice to what they were practicing it as. Alchemy is what my ongoing studies, but as I said, my study in that is still immature. I have to make some more refinements on this concept. That's what. Thank you very much.
Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Yogi Ramsuratkumar Jaya Guru Raya. Thank you so much, Professor Ramanathan, for a very, very interesting talk. I do have a question for you as well. So what is the correct pronunciation? Is it iron or iron? Okay, I think that will be an ongoing question. Thank you so much, Professor. And I think it was a very scintillating afternoon session. Once again, a big, big thank you to Dr. Meera and Professor Ramanathan for really engaging all of us and keeping things so interesting. Before we honor Professor Ramanathan, I'd just like to say two lines, and that is, I think we all agree that we're living in a time where there is a revival of our ancient wisdom. And hearing people like Dr. Meera and Professor Ramanathan, I'm convinced that our country is in the right hands. They are the torch bearers of this revival. Dr. Meera spoke about coincidences. I don't think it's any coincidence that Bhagwan Yogi Ramsuratkumar has brought all these torch bearers on this stage, and us, the lucky audience, we get to sit, we get to hear this pearls of wisdom. We have been fed so well. It's been a treat for all our senses. So a big, big thank you to Bhagwan Yogi Ramsuratkumar. A thank you to Ma Devaki and all the organizers for You're making this event such a grand treat. On that happy note, day 2 of our national conference has come to an end. We now request Auditor Suresh, trustee of the Devaki Veda Patasala of the Yogi Ramsuratkumar Ashram, to please honor Professor Ramanathan.